A judge this week dismissed the New Hampshire Attorney General's case against the ringleaders of a neo-Nazi organization.
NSC 131 members were charged with violating New Hampshire's civil rights laws earlier this year, but a judge dropped the charges, saying the reasons used by the Attorney General's office were too broad. This is the latest development on the neo-Nazi group and one of the first legal wins for the organization, which has been known to target refugees and the LGBTQ+ community. News Center Maine's Jack Molman joins us with more on what this all means. Jack?
Amanda, this is not the first time NSC 131 members have found themselves in legal trouble. According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, members were reported to have attended the January 6th insurrection. Now, these last few years, the group has disrupted drag queen story hours in Boston and most recently marched through Portland, beat a counter-protester and yelled racist and homophobic slurs. And as for what they were charged with in New Hampshire, it seemed to be a first violation of civil rights.
You can see the first photo here, a sign over Route 1 in Portsmouth labeled, quote, "Keep New England White." The Attorney General in New Hampshire says the fact they clipped the banner onto city property without a permit made this a civil rights violation. But in the judge's dismissal paperwork, you see that there just wasn't enough evidence to continue the case against the NSC 131 members. Professor Karen Sporer with the University of Maine studies terrorism and extremism. She says the free speech laws in our country mean prosecutors need to have an overwhelming amount of evidence if they want to charge neo-Nazi groups.
Prosecutors have to walk a fine line and have a lot of evidence to back up charges when it comes to free speech, right? And at what point do they move from free speech to advocating the use of violence against an individual or a group of people? And it just doesn't sound like they had anything remotely close to that for prosecuting this group of guys.
And NSC 131 is not the only hate group that is on the rise in our country. The Southern Poverty Law Center put out new data based on incidents from 2022. We see nationally that hate groups like NSC 131 mobilize online. The SPLC says in 2022, groups targeted schools by attempting to ban books. And throughout 2022, we saw that take shape here in Maine, where numerous book challenges came against literature that depicted LGBTQ-friendly material. While not directly tied to a hate group, much of the same themes we see nationwide. The SPLC data also says neo-Nazi groups and white power groups were the top two kinds of organizations to get their message out there through leafletting. The hotspots for leafletting in the nation were here in the Northeast, with much of heavily populated parts of New England in the red. Nationwide bannering has been on the rise as well since 2018, going from just over 100 on average up to 800 instances. Bannering like what we saw in Portsmouth last year. The overall number of hate and extremist groups is on the rise, with 838 documented in 2020, 1,221 in 2021, with 4 more than that documented in 2022.
If this neo-Nazi group NSC 131 had been liable for violating New Hampshire civil rights laws, the ringleaders who were charged would have had to pay a $5,000 fine and face a restraining order. But now it seems that they will be walking away. They were also able to walk away without any repercussions in Portland when the group marched to City Hall in April and shouted racist and homophobic slurs. The city of Portland says it has a meeting with the interim chief of police about how to deal with this group this coming Monday. Chris, Amanda.
Jack Molman, thank you.